Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome along to the very first live podcast for the Centre for Journalism here at Leeds Trinity University. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Oh, now come on. There's a fair few of you here. Good afternoon. That's okay. That's not too bad. This is in collaboration this afternoon with the Leeds Digital Festival, and we're going to be looking at some really, really interesting stuff over the course of the next half an hour or so. And first of all, I'd like you to make some noise, ladies and gentlemen, for the co-founder of the Leeds Digital Festival, Stuart Clark. Also on our panel today, ladies and gentlemen, we have Associate Professor here at LTU. It is, of course, Catherine Blair. Senior Lecturer and TV Guru, Lindsay Eastwood. Media Law Enthusiast and Programme Leader of Broadcast Journalism, it's Lee Purvis. And we have Academic Professional, it is, of course, Dr. Carolyn Jackson-Brown. And the man that spends a lot of time on this research that you're going to see very shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, Sports Journalism Programme Leader, Paul Marsden. My name's Darren Harper. I am one of the senior lecturers on journalism and broadcast journalism and sports journalism. Also, my real passion is podcasting, so it's lovely that we're doing this first podcast, and also as a finalist in the Rock, Paper, Scissors World Championships. That's my CV. Stuart, let's come to you first of all. 2015, you started the Leeds Digital Festival. What made you start it, and explain a little bit more about it?
I think like most best ideas, it was in a pub. There's a bunch of us who work in the tech world. We talked about, the increasing growth of the tech sector in Leeds, but it had quite a low profile compared to, obviously London, which is then and still the biggest tech sector, but even comparable cities like Manchester, Birmingham, Newcastle, we had a low profile. So we thought, let's do something there where we can shout about the talent, the innovation we have. So we thought, let's do a digital festival, not a new idea. So we had our first one in April 2016. We had 56 events. Following year, it was 110. The year after that, 180. And it's just grown and grown. So this fortnight, we've got 205 events. It's our 9th festival. We keep coming back. We keep growing. We have amazing sponsors like Leeds Trinity University to help us going, and it brings people together. And it's depending what sorts of tech you're into, whether it's digital sport. And there's lots going on. Next Wednesday evening, Digital Sport North, I've got a great event on. Whether you're into AI or data or health tech, there's absolutely something for you. And at all levels. So, for example, we've got lots of AI this year, as you might expect. But it's from literally, what is AI to PhD level data and AI. So there's absolutely something for everyone across the whole of the city. So, encourage you to look at the program, and if there's anything you're interested in, go along and learn and network and build your contacts up.
Obviously, this is the highlight of the festival, what you're doing today. But what are you've mentioned a couple? What's other highlights for you? Do you think?
We have an award ceremony each year, and it's not black tie. There are no tables, there are no food. It's in the Belgrade Music Hall in the gig room. So I think it's like the best awards ever. We've got a couple of government ministers coming up to see us next week. And it's just everything. And in fact, tomorrow afternoon, there's something called the Innovation Walk. So it's a 2-hour walk around the old sort of where the Industrial Revolution started in Leeds. And if you know anyone from Birmingham, Manchester, and they say it started there, it's they're having you on. It started in Leeds, and it's a walk around all the different places in Leeds where that innovation has been going for 200 years. And then we end up in a pub where we set up the digital festival all those years ago. So it's a good thing. Yeah, lots of networking.
Have you booked a host yet for the awards? I'm just checking. My diary's free, I think.
Well, again, it's an anti-award, so it's not really a host, It's
disappointing. Okay, well, we're going to come back to you in a second, Stuart. But let's hand over to Paul, who's done some amazing research on the digital impact across the Leeds sector.
Yeah, so I was just going to start. If you could put your hand up if you're doing either journalism or sports journalism. So that's most of you. So other people doing English or media courses? Yeah, okay, that's great. So this research is primarily around journalism, but there's also elements of it that work quite well across both media and English as well. And it's all about basically your career in Leeds as a graduate, effectively, by speaking to employers and getting their findings on what they value. So a little bit about the department to start. So last year, we reached 100% graduate level employability for the first time. It's one of these statistics that sounds really dry, but basically every student who came on the degree managed to leave with a graduate job within 18 months. So career effectively, you can't actually do any better than that. So that's something that we're really passionate about. You know, we want people to come to university and transform their lives because we know it is quite expensive. So we want to kind of really make sure that everybody gets the best out of their experience. And recently, as I'm sure the journalism guys may have been told quite a few times this week, we came first in the Guardian's National League table for journalism, which was a massive achievement for us. We came second last year. And this research is really about maintaining that level of performance by finding out what the employers want from modern journalism graduates. And it's quite important to talk about who I actually spoke to. So I spoke to 9 people. They're all in what is called the Leeds City region, which is primarily West Yorkshire, but a bit of North Yorkshire as well. 2 broadcasters, one in radio, one in TV, but the majority of the people are actually in different fields. So primarily in what used to be the regional press. So 2 in regional news, 2 in sports news, 2 in public relations, which is a really important area for our students. Communications is really big for us as a field of jobs now, and 1 in club media, which if you're a sports journalist is a real growing area. It's the media that the clubs produce themselves, particularly football teams. So they're able to give me some really good advice on what they're looking for from students going into the workplace. So just a bit of background on this. Before even I was born, and before I'm guessing most of you were born, more than 3/4 of people in Britain used to read a daily newspaper at least 3 times a week. Within about 20 years of that, by 2006, that had dropped to half the population of the country. So there'd been a big change. And that was before the internet came into effect. And one of the big changes that has meant is that print, in terms of newspapers, have really decreased in terms of audiences even further. Online has become a much bigger area in terms of people finding news. Social media, again, has become a really important area in terms of people finding news. TV, again, a bit like print, has found it quite challenging, although quite a lot of the TV output that you see will also quite often be through social media as well. So there has been a lot of change within journalism as an industry, as with the wider media. And you can see that in kind of circulation figures for newspapers. So newspapers such as the Mail and the Sun get about 1 million people reading them now, but get far more people going into their websites. So the Mail, for example, has more than 300 million people accessing a story on their website every month. The Guardian, a similar kind of figure. So you can really see how that transformation has occurred in journalism over that period. So what I was asking about when I was speaking to these 8 employers was how this shift in this business model from looking primarily at things like print and TV towards online and social media had changed the skills that they needed from graduates. And I kind of split the kind of modern journalistic skills into 2 areas. They were either traditional skills such as news writing, interviewing, so going and speaking to people, audience awareness, so that's kind of knowing what the people who are consuming the media that you're producing think about things and what they're interested in. Video journalism, which was primarily for broadcasters in the past, but is spread a bit further now. Audio production, again, primarily radio, much more into podcasting as well now, and storytelling. And then a range of new skills as well that were kind of not something that journalists particularly did before, such as photography, which was normally done by photographers, but in terms of news outlets is quite often left up to journalists now. Social media, which obviously didn't exist at the start of the 80s. Mobile journalism, audience analytics, so in terms of understanding all the data you get from your social media posts and your websites, and data journalism, which is the kind of using the figures that, for example, the government have or things like Opta Sports collect loads of data around sports matches and using that within the content that you're producing. So those were the things that I was talking to them about. Those were the kind of questions I was asking them, which kind of, in a very weird way, led me to this character. And I'm just going to turn the lights off a second. Okay. Just put this back on.
Thought we were going to watch the whole film then.
No, not the whole film. Do we know who that is? For a start, have a pick somebody who everybody knows. Yes, yes, we kind of know who that is. Okay, so the reason I was showing you a bit of James Bond is because the big thing that employers were speaking to me about when I was asking about skills, when I'm asking about what do you want from your journalists, what do you want, is they constantly come back to this thing around adaptability. So if you watch a Bond film, Bond is one of the fastest people alive running down the street. He can ski while he's shooting. He can drive while he's shooting. He can climb things. He can be in hand-to-hand combat. He's one of the best poker players in the world. He can do pretty much whatever you want him to do at any given point. And that's kind of, in a way, why I'm talking about him now. Because what employers were saying to me kind of continually, what they're looking for in graduates, is someone who can adapt to the circumstances that organisation finds itself in at that point. So that top quote there is about people trying stuff out, like trial and error, and trying new things and using different platforms and seeing how they can get on, being flexible. You know, sometimes it might involve working long hours, but you're going to manage to work your way up that way. Being digitally savvy across all kinds of platforms and competent. And this is the actual quote, competent in all that kind of stuff. Okay, they're not exactly sure what exactly they're wanting to pin down, but they know roughly the area that they're talking about. And then another one picks up everything from like TikTok all the way to Pinterest and YouTube. Digital's probably going to keep growing. And they even go into social media specifics, such as like in Google or Facebook, they put out what's called the Bible, so how the algorithms work, and being able to adjust to what is asked for in terms of that and getting a deeper insight of what people want. And the final quote is probably the most telling for me. I need someone who can adapt to whatever we need them to adapt to. Okay, so very simple. And the reason they gave for that is that they thought the technology is only going to make that 1,000-fold going forward.
And I think, Stuart, the more we talk about digital skills and that term adaptability, that's so crucial, isn't it?
I think so. You know, with my day job, I run a PR company that works with tech firms and just tech firms in Leeds. And I think that adaptability, that flexibility across the board, it's really important. And you know, I've worked closely with one of your graduates over the years, a guy called Kane Fulton, and you know, he became a journalist in the tech newspaper, trade newspaper called Tech Radar. Then he worked for a government-funded organization, doing lots of content, working with startups, scale-ups around the country. And now he's working for a tech consultancy. And he's still producing content. And some of that content is long-form blog posts. Some of it is shorter social media for Twitter and Instagram and others, or sort of medium-sized long posts for the likes of LinkedIn. Different angles, different positioning. So he has to adapt himself every day about a new product. Maybe it's a new office they're opening somewhere, but it's that constant flexibility I think is really important.
Yeah. Paul, and you're sort of drilling down in some of those skills now as well.
Yeah, so just going back to the journalism a bit as well. So I asked them about the skills and said, well, how are you going to rank these skills? So if 5 is absolutely essential for a job within your company at this point, as you can see from their responses around different things, okay, there's a bit of adjustment. There's some things that some of the organisations value than the others, but they're all scoring really, really high. I asked 9 people about news writing, and all of them have said it is absolutely essential. So that was the one that scored the highest, but the rest of them are not far behind. You know, they're really kind of expecting a high level across lots of different areas, and that's kind of really important to note. So when I looked at the figures in terms of identifying the top skills, like I say, number one, news writing, absolutely essential, pretty much was the quote from everybody. It's central to everything what we do. So that is obviously a legacy skill, an older skill. Second one is around audience awareness. So that was really high ranking as well. So they want people to understand who the audience is that they're writing for. They're not just writing stuff and sending it out there and not worrying about who's reading it or who's engaging with it. So the new skill that's kind of traveled the furthest in terms of importance for them is social media. So that came third. So that's really high ranking. They really want journalists to have a good idea of social media, because they're saying every day it's becoming more important and more influential in people's day-to-day lives. So that's a big area that they're kind of focusing on. And the final two are kind of ones around journalism, but also related to media and a bit of English as well. Interviewing is something, obviously, speaking to people, going out, and as they're saying, kind of getting it from the horse's mouth is huge, is one of the quotes from one of the employers. You conduct interviews, that is what you do. So that's a really crucial skill for journalists when they graduate. And the final one, like I say, is about telling those stories, what do the audience want, making sure you really engage with finding the articles that people want to produce.
And Carolyn, it's not a surprise that there's a big sort of rosette there, top new skill, social media.
Absolutely. And that goes hand in hand with the employer audience awareness. You need to know what people are doing and how they consume stuff. So what's changed for you in your careers as journalists is that we used to have a separation between producers and consumers, but now the consumers are doing the producing on social media, and you're up against them in one way, but also collaborating with them in another. So things that have changed, we're calling this, aren't we, Stuart, the digital festival, but in academia, we call it digital disruption, because you used to have broadcasters and audiences, which affects media and English as well. But that's no longer the case. The consumers are producing social media themselves. And with the advent of the social media influences, they are starting to shape they're amassing huge followings and shaping the social discourse. So something journalists would not do, but they are doing, is, for example, in recent years, advising people not to have the COVID vaccine and not to vote in the general election, to detach. So those are things a journalist would not do. And by the time you finish your course here, you're at the Centre for Journalism at Leeds Trinity, or wherever else you're learning about your craft, you will know that you are supposed to support society and not try to sort of disrupt it too much. So talking about the trends that Paul was showing us on those graphs, when Putin rolled his tanks into Ukraine, we were doing reporting of the war in Ukraine in our classes, as we would be. Now, in terms of age group, the master's students who are older than you, they looked on their computers in the room next door to here, and they looked at the legacy media sources, so the old newspapers and the broadcasters, in their online content for what was going on, because we weren't really sure whether Putin was doing a special military operation or what had happened. But the undergraduates in the same rooms, different days, but same room, reached straight for their pockets and straight onto their phones. And the younger lot, the second years, really only looked at TikTok and what we now call X. And that's where they thought the truth was coming from. But we now know there were political actors in there. And of course, as you were pointing, you will see later, the legacy media people are having to go there too. So you will end up with a lot of time in social media, as every day, it says here, every single day is becoming more important and more influential for the reporting of wars, the reporting of events, what to do, whether to do it. This is your job. Your job is to help people trust that society is a safe and secure place. And that's why we're training you as the next layer. But those are the developments that have changed quite quickly, quite recently.
I still won't call it X. Anyway, Paul, those are the journalism skills. We're going to look at some of the actual digital skills that are really important.
I think those are the kind of key digital skills. That's kind of how it's all kind of shaked down in terms. And if you go back here, for example, there is some things that weren't quite as high, but were still kind of really highly ranked. So it very much depends. For example, if you work in a local newspaper whether they wanted to do photography, or how interested, like some of the sports guys are really interested in data journalism, and the local guys were really interested in video journalism, for example, and mobile journalism that I know we're going to talk about in a minute was something that was really crucial in terms of that.
Yeah, so let's get on to mobile journalism then, shall we? And of course, Lindsay Eastwood and Catherine Blair, experts in this field. And Lindsay, first of all, how has the industry taken on mobile journalism?
Yeah, so I think media outlets across the board really are putting a massive emphasis on visual storytelling now. So obviously the younger generation are consuming masses of video content all the time. So newspaper reporters are being sent out with to gather video for their websites and for socials. Radio stations, obviously traditionally audio, their reporters are being sent out now to gather video, again for websites and socials, and even the sort of traditional TV stations are also sending their reporters out with mobile phones now. So the emphasis is on Mojo, what we call Mojo, so short for mobile journalism. And the weapon of choice really for a lot of organisations is the iPhone. So there's lots of advantages really to being able to learn how to film, but we will put the emphasis on professionally. So you're producing a professional product to make you stand out from just normal sort of users that are filming on their phones. So employers are looking for these sort of Mojo skills. Basically, your phone, it's a cheaper tool than buying a traditional, like say, Sony camera. They're smaller, so you can be really sort of nimble about the locations that you go out filming. You're not sort of carting heavy equipment, traditional cameras and tripods around with you. Really easy to use, and the quality on the newer versions of the iPhones is absolutely amazing. So you can get some beautiful shots, you can get depth of field and everything, just sort of really quickly and easy. And one of the main advantages as well is it's less intimidating for your interviewees. So people will tend to open up to you more if you're interviewing them using a phone rather than a sort of big traditional broadcast standard camera. Some colleagues of mine that were filming in the recent summer riots, so in Hare Hills and Rotherham and Hull, said that using the mobile phone kits was so much more advantageous because they just blended into the crowd. So obviously all the public had their phones out filming as well. They just looked like another member of the public rather than a broadcast corporation that was going to be targeted potentially in that sort of violent situation. So lots of advantages of using mobile phones. So yeah, employers are looking for skills, mobile journalism skills, looking for people that can, shoot video on their mobile phones quickly and easy, but also use your phones for gathering as well. So using social media to gather footage. So again, with the riots this summer, there was loads of footage on TikTok that all the media outlets used, and use that as a source of footage as well. So yeah, it's mobile journalism is something that we have been teaching here at Trinity for well over 10 years now. And Catherine Blair, my lovely colleague, has pioneered that really here at Leeds Trinity, teaching the students the kind of professional skills that they need out in industry, haven't you?
Yeah, 2007 is when the iPhone was released, and that sort of dates to the kind of the beginning of the Mojo or mobile journalism epoch. And coincidentally, it's a year I started teaching here at Leeds Trinity. We brought in a broadcast journalism course in 2013, and at that time we bought 14 iPhones. I think they were iPhone 5s at the time. And I think it was because we recognized that mobile journalism was going to be really key. We started introducing tweeting in intro weeks like the one that you guys are participating in as something quite new very early on. And gradually we built up skills for mobile journalism within the students. And, they call this phone the Swiss Army knife of journalism, really, because you can do everything on it. You can capture video and audio. You can interview people. With the new release of the iOS, I gather you'll be able to record, FaceTime videos, that kind of thing. So you can also transmit live from on location. You can edit on your phone. All of these things are skills that we teach on the course. And it's really just trying to elevate you and bring you up to industry, but actually we've been leading the way for industry. So as Lindsay said, she's been talking to colleagues and former students who are now in industry and the importance of using the mobile phone. But really, since 2013, we recognized that this was really important, and we started sort of leading the way in terms of teaching students so that when they left us after their 3-year undergraduate degree or their 1-year MA degree, they had those mobile journalism skills to go into industry. And it's quite surprising that although some industry people were leading the way, Sky and whatnot, they boasted about being able to go live in 60 seconds very early on. I remember it was being discussed by Sky Reporter at the 2016 Mobile Journalism Conference in London. But some of the sort of regional news people were still sort of holding on to this idea that the bigger cameras were somehow better. They weren't, and now they're recognizing that they aren't, and they've brought in those kits, but it's really, for our regional institutions, it's mostly been in the last sort of 18 months, maybe 2 years, for television anyways. So I think there's a recognition actually, and they're getting it from the young people that are graduating from places like Leeds Trinity, that this is the way to go, and it can do what you need to do and also make you, as Lindsay says, much more nimble.
And these are all fantastic skills, Stuart, aren't they? But at the essence of everything as well, what's so important is not just the skills, but also the storytelling.
I think that's right, and obviously I'm coming from the tech and digital background, not a journalism background, but that story is really important. Whatever you're talking about, and that flexibility, and one of the things I do in my job, whether it's our clients or with a festival, lots of interviewing people because we like lots of content. And you're exactly right. You put a big expensive camera in front of them, and they just freeze up. I've been the last few days with the festival. I've just been taking a lightweight tripod, and I've just been putting my Google Pixel, big shout out for the Pixels here, on there, and then people just open up, and it's just like, you stand to the side of it, they're just chatting away to you, and it just makes a massive difference. Then you can just say, either do something with yourself or send it to your team instantly, and things happen with it, as opposed to, the clunky equipment. But that story, it's really important, and I think having that flexibility of equipment, it gives you that flexibility about chasing that story, whether it's dodging missiles in a riot scene, or just having those looser and more organic chats with people, and that's when the stories come out.
That's one thing, to be able to shoot these stories and do mobile journalism and use these digital skills, but also to do it within the realms of the law. Now, Lee, you're our media law expert. My only training was, if in doubt, leave it out, but there's a little bit more to it than that.
There's a lot more to it than that. But I was actually going to chip in earlier when we were talking about the riots, and just to say, as a bit of a disclaimer, it's really important to understand how the law works. If you are out and about with your mobile phone taking footage, not to go against what Lindsay and Catherine were saying, it's just really vital to know the basics, like not to cross police lines if you're, outside a crime scene, or indeed the riots. Don't film children. I could go on for hours, but actually what I wanted to talk about today, because we're talking about all things digital, is basically to understand, it's really important that we all understand the huge, vast amount of digital content on there, especially when it comes to news globally, but also to have an understanding about that content itself. So, for example, with the Lucy Letby case, the reporting of this digitally and globally has been phenomenal. It's taken me years to be able to say that word without messing up. But, it was very interesting. So here in England, journalists and reporters had a blanket ban on court reporting proceedings. So there were things we couldn't report at all, so as not to prejudice the trial. However, during that time in America, the New Yorker, whose head office is in America, in New York, funnily enough, they actually published a hard copy of very detailed reports from that court case that went globally, and subscribers here in England could access that copy. Now, in this long-form article were some very detailed events about what had been said in court. The journalist who printed this had contacted people to ask very intrusive questions about Letby herself and the events that led to the court case. And, you know, this blurred the lines of media law in our country, and this is happening more and more. So one thing that I would strenuously advise us all to be, okay, I'm not saying go out and be a media law solicitor, but have an understanding, question everything that you see online. In the world of fake news and AI, I think Ofcom recently released a survey where 45% of adults in the UK are reading and consuming fake news digitally every single day, and they're believing that. So don't be one of those people. Question, question, question. And as you'll know, if you work with me on your degree programme here, verify the source as many times as you can.
Exactly. Well done. Now we're going to come to you for some questions in a second. But before we do, Catherine, just give us a little bit of a plug for this new service that you've come out with, Mojo Hacks.
So Mojo Hacks really came out of, Lindsay and I have been teaching video skills for 2 decades now. And every year we say the same things to the students. And I thought, why not like give the information in bite-sized educational videos that hopefully are a little bit fun. We had fun doing them. And also sort of show people some of the skills that they need in order to shoot journalistic video for mobile. So we're now on TikTok, Instagram, and X, and also on YouTube. You can access all the shorts there, but we'll be drip feeding them out. But it's just a bit of professional skill making for you. Will add to your classes and hopefully make you better at capturing video when you're out and about. And I sort of dragged you into it, but you're all for it now, all for it.
It's amazing and not embarrassing at all, to be honest.
Right, let's get some questions for the audience. I've got the roving mic, so pop your hand in the air if you've got a question. Don't be shy. There's some questions up there. I'm moving up here now, looking at you, and you're going to ask your question, aren't you?
I just wanted to know, like, you were mentioning AI earlier, with like technical questions. So with digital convergence, would you say there's kind of like a limit that will eventually reach where it kind of starts to negatively impact journalism? So obviously it's making it more accessible to like citizen journalism and stuff like that. Would you say with AI and the things that will come with that kind of hurts journalism as a whole?
I'll give this a stab. I think there's a couple of bits, and it's been touched on the fake news piece, and AI is great if you use it wisely and considerately. And just in the tech world, with the last couple of years, we've had examples of, say, law firms using AI, putting client details into something like ChatGPT, and of course it's out there in the public domain then, so you have to be careful what you do, and particularly in journalism, just check your sources afterwards. But on the flip side of that, just in Leeds itself, but across the UK is becoming a global leader in online safety, and a big part of that again is checking against fake news. It's checking against fake videos and everything. There's 3 or 4 really incredible fast-growing firms in Leeds, Crisp and Logically, who are doing some great work on that. So I think AI is great to use it, and I use it a lot for mainly sort of prompting and almost having a conversation with myself, and then I'll turn it off and then do the work myself. And I think with journalism, that's the same. Trust your sources, trust the where you're getting the information from, and just use AI as a sort of safety net and just another tool, just as you would perhaps with with a Google Pixel as opposed to an iPhone or other things. But just don't put something in and then just put it straight online without doing a proper checking first.
Okay, we've got a question here, and then I'm coming to you. Okay, hold on.
Hi, I want to know how effective cross-collaboration and integration will be in this
So it's effective what?
effective, how effective cross-collaboration and integration will be in this
I think vital. I think absolutely vital. Yeah.
Are you talking about the global broadcasts we do here? Yeah, well, that's another sort of thing that we've launched at Leeds Trinity, which is doing broadcasts across the globe with other university students that are also studying journalism in other parts of the world. So for a number of years, we've launched broadcasts on a series of issues like climate, racism, tackling racism, food shortages, supply chain, these sort of issues that are affecting people across the world, really. And we come together and do mass collaborations with sort of 13, 14 universities. So we've gone global from Leeds Trinity with these sorts of collaborations. So it's very effective. And that's all come about because of the digital revolution, really.
Wonderful. Question here.
So going back to fake news, this is a question I've been thinking about. Do you think the law is like pretty far behind? Like, is it just me, or is the law like really, really far behind in tackling fake news and AI news and that sort of thing? In the sense of like news totally created by AI or news totally created just to, you know, be a hit piece, for example. And sorry, I'm a bit all over the place.
Shall I start and try and answer some of that first question? So there's been a lot of media headlines recently about fake news and the light shining on the British judicial system and the fact that so many people think it's really archaic and really old-fashioned. But, you know, you could say that, I suppose, about so many different genres like public affairs. Like, look at our reporting going up to the general election this year. You know, some said, you know, a lot of voters were attracted, arguably, via TikTok, yeah, and the political campaigns on there. Is it time that our judicial system in this country followed suit? I'm not saying trial by TikTok, but what I am saying is, could there be lessons learned? There's a big shake-up with the House of Lords at the moment as well, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens with that, how it happens, and how that potentially can have a knock-on effect to modernise the British judicial system. Yes, was there another part of the question?
Yeah, I think perfectly what I was trying to say. I meant along the lines of like, should the law be like really, really quickly or like update a lot more faster to tackle the new ways that people try and put out disinformation? For example, we can't take down GB News because it's classified as entertainment and not news, yet it's still called news. And then
yeah, so it's all about regulation, media regulation, and that is something that I specialise in and could talk about for quite a long time. But in answer to that question, Ofcom, who regulate all our broadcast and online content, you know, they're looking closer at tightening up regulation around that. That is an area that they're definitely looking at tightening up. I mean, just yesterday, Instagram tightened up a lot of their rules around young people posting on Instagram. So it's evolving all the time. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Caroline.
Yes, so it's just the regulation of fake news. We need to be careful because fake news isn't just AI. I mentioned political actors earlier. Early on in the Ukraine war, as we're now calling it, the recent version of that, before Russia went into Mariupol, the troops went in ahead, took over the media station, got rid of those media people, planted their own people in there, and were in charge of the news, in inverted commas, before the tanks rolled in and before they bombarded it with missiles. So they've been doing that everywhere they go, taking over the media place first. You might think that's a secondary thing. We used to have war correspondents. Do you remember? Oh, there's a war on, I'll go there and report it. Other way around now, take over the media agency and then start the war. So in terms of having control of the message. I mean, fake news covers so much more than just computer-generated rubbish or people playing citizen journalism on their phones, I think. But it's difficult to regulate, especially when it's from another country.
A question on the back. What's your advice for networking successfully?
Networking, go to all the Leeds Digital Festival events. I mean, I mentioned it, I know there's lots of digital sports journalists here. I mentioned Digital Sport North, which have events every couple of months within Leeds. Some great speakers. Leeds itself has got loads of great sports content companies. For example, Planet Sport, tens of millions of viewers across Planet Football, Planet Golf, I think it is, Planet Rugby, Formula One. And they, so they have hundreds and hundreds of pieces of content for each of their websites. So it's, Leeds is a real hotbed of sports content, sports media. And I'd say, get out there, turn up to things, build a good network. The more you go to things, the more you'll see people, because it can be quite unnerving to go to something in a room where you don't know anyone. But if you keep turning up, you'll start seeing sort of familiar faces. Big plug, next Friday morning, we have Baroness Jones of Whitechurch, who's a government minister in the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, and she's responsible for online safety. So if you're interested in that, it's 10:15 in Leeds City Centre. It's open to all. So have a look at the programme. And also, we have an all year round platform called Leeds Digital, where we have different events all year round. So just keep checking that. Just keep checking everything and come in and build on your time within Leeds. There's a lot of stuff going on in Leeds across the whole sports, journalism, digital tech, across everything. And it's the most collaborative tech sector in the whole of the UK. I promise you that.
Another question on the back.
My question is about tackling censoring of media, especially in social media, because especially since the war with Palestine media, we found that a lot of media seems to get censored if it doesn't follow a certain agenda, and we've seen instances of it on X, instances of it on Instagram. And how do you tackle that while remaining impartial at the same time?
I'll just start off by saying, before throwing to Carolyn probably, but basically I think that's really interesting, a brilliant question. And the reason that we're all so much more aware of that in today's society is because of the amount of content that's being put out on social media and the digital world that we're living in. Do you want to say, I'm not entirely sure it's a new thing. I think it's been around for years, but we're all talking about it more. It's less taboo because of the digital world that we're living in.
Yes, I mean, come on one of our courses and we discuss that at great length, and hopefully we'll send you out into the world as people with critical thinking minds that can devise new regulation. It is really tricky. We've got the balance between freedom of speech and harming others. And digital technology that we're celebrating today has played a wonderful role, but it does both jobs. And you sort of can't have one without the other. So it's a dilemma, it's a conundrum. Here we think about it and we care about it a lot. And there are no easy answers, of course, but tech has a lot to do with it.
Well, some fantastic questions. So thanks very much for those. We'll wrap it up. Some final thoughts, Stuart. How do you see the future? Is it a bright future, do you think?
I think it's really a very bright future. But can I just mention about that networking thing? One thing I forgot. LinkedIn might be really boring. It might come across as boring, but it's so important. If you meet someone at a networking event, if you talk to a potential employer, they'll want to see you on LinkedIn. So put all the stuff you've got on there, the content you've done, and shout about how amazing you are. But LinkedIn is really important. But the future is, as has been said across the whole panel, it's content, regardless of what form it comes in. And I was really interested with that graph going back to the real olden days of print journalism. I thought, God, that's when I started in sixth form, right in the real old days. But we're consuming more and more stuff, and that means we need really good, talented people to actually write the good stuff, not just press a button and it comes out through AI, because people see through that and they don't tend to look at it for too much. They want good written content, whether that's in a still a printed broadsheet, whether it's on something like Planet Sport, whether it's a tech firm that's putting lots of stuff out on its own blogs or LinkedIn or whatever. It's just, it's amazing. If you've got talent and you've got some determination, there's a ton of stuff out there for you.
Wonderful. Thanks very much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for being with us. Can I get a little bit of a round of applause for our panel? Of course, Paul Marsden, Dr. Carolyn Jackson-Brown, Lee Purvis, Lindsay Eastwood, Catherine Blair, and of course, Stuart Clark, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for being with us. Make sure you follow the Centre for Journalism on Twitter and all the other social media as well. And we'll see you in lectures next week. Enjoy the rest of your week. And if you've got free Dominoes, enjoy that as well. Thanks very much.